The maintenance bay of Vega Crown Station stretched out like a cathedral of rust and recycled dreams. Fluorescent strips flickered overhead, casting intermittent shadows across rows of workbenches cluttered with half-assembled machinery and abandoned projects. The air tasted of metal shavings and burnt circuitry, underlaid with the faint sweetness of coolant leak that maintenance had been promising to fix for 3 cycles now. Dr. Nathan Cole shifted his weight on the uncomfortable metal stool, adjusting the magnification on his work visor. The power core in his hands hummed with barely contained energy, its crystalline matrix pulsing with a soft blue light that reminded him of Earth's oceans, oceans he hadn't seen in 4 years. His fingers moved with practiced precision, realigning the fractured coupling that had been giving him trouble for the past week. The bay was supposed to be empty at this hour. Station time showed Oro 300, that dead zone, between shifts, when even the most dedicated workaholics surrendered to exhaustion. Nathan preferred these hours. No questions about why a former weapons designer was tinkering with civilian tech. No pitying looks from those who knew his story. No whispered conversations that stopped the moment he entered a room. A slight shift in the air made him pause. The temperature dropped perhaps half a degree, and with it came a presence that seemed to absorb sound itself. Nathan didn't need to look up to know who had entered. The way conversations died in the main hangar, the way even hardened mercenaries stepped aside, there was only one person on Vega Crown who commanded that kind of fearful respect. Captain Lyra Vile moved through the bay like a shadow given form. Her footsteps made no sound on the grated floor, a feat that should have been impossible given the heavy combat boots she wore. Nathan caught glimpses of her in his peripheral vision, tall, lean, wrapped in a modified flight suit that bore no insignia, but plenty of repair patches. Each patch told a story of survival, of battles that should have killed her, but didn't. She settled at a workbench 3 meters away, just close enough to be in the same space, but far enough to maintain that invisible barrier everyone seemed to respect. Nathan heard the soft click of a weapons case being opened, followed by the distinctive whir of a plasma rifle's core being extracted. For 20 minutes, they worked in complete silence. Nathan could have chosen any other bench in the bay. There were dozens available. But something about the deliberate way she ignored him, the studied indifference in her movements, made him stay. It wasn't defiance exactly, more like recognition. She was here for the same reason he was to be alone without being alone. The power core in Nathan's hands suddenly sparked, a brief but violent discharge that would have taken off his fingertips if not for the insulated gloves. He cursed under his breath, reaching for the diagnostic scanner. "Your coupling matrix is misaligned." The voice was low, accented in ways that suggested Karen wasn't her first language, or her second. Nathan looked up for the first time, meeting eyes that were the color of burnished copper, with vertical pupils that dilated slightly in the shifting light. The scar that ran from her left temple to her jaw was famous or infamous, depending on who told the story. Some said she got it fighting off an entire hegemony kill squad single-handed. Others claimed it was from a bar fight that leveled half a district on Kepler Station. "I know," Nathan replied, keeping his tone neutral. "The manufacturer used a non-standard threading. Makes it nearly impossible to achieve proper alignment without custom tools." She turned back to her rifle without another word. But 2 minutes later, a small metal tool slid across the space between their benches. Nathan picked it up, examined it. It was Chiron-made, elegant in its simplicity. Exactly what he needed. "Thanks," he said, already applying it to the coupling. No response. Not that he expected one. The thing about Lyra Vale, Nathan had learned from station gossip, was that she had been different once, before the siege of Castell, before she became the Karen Empire's most decorated soldier, before whatever happened that made her leave that all behind. Now, she was a freelance security contractor, which was a polite way of saying mercenary. Ships hired her when they absolutely, positively needed to survive passage through disputed space. Nathan finished the alignment, and the power core hummed to life with a perfect, steady resonance. He slid the tool back across the gap. "Keep it," she said without looking up. "You clearly need it more than I do." There was no mockery in her tone, just statement of fact. Nathan pocketed the tool and went back to his work. This time, pulling out a damaged sensor array he'd salvaged from a decommissioned probe. The station's ventilation system kicked in with a groaning protest, sending a wave of cooler air through the bay. In the improved lighting, Nathan could see more details of Lyra's workspace. Everything was arranged with military precision tools laid out by size and function, components sorted into clear categories. But there was something else, something that didn't fit the image of the cold, efficient killer everyone whispered about. A small holoframe sat at the corner of her bench, facing away from him. The image was obscured, but the soft pulse of its active display suggested it was on, displaying whatever memory she carried with her. "You're the weapons designer," she said suddenly. Not a question. Nathan's hands stilled for a moment before resuming their work. "Former. The one who refused the Gorham contract." The Gorham contract. Such a clinical name for what would have been genocide. A weapon designed to target specific genetic markers, capable of wiping out entire colonies while leaving infrastructure intact. The Alliance had wanted it to end the border conflicts once and for all. Nathan had seen the simulations. The projected casualty numbers that included children, civilians, entire bloodlines erased with surgical precision. "That's me," he said simply. "They destroyed your career for it. They tried to destroy more than that." The words came out more bitter than he intended. The Alliance didn't just fire him. They had blacklisted him, frozen his accounts, made sure no major corporation would touch him. If not for a few old friends and his ability to fix anything with a circuit board, he'd probably be dead in some forgotten corner of space by now. Lyra was looking at him now. Really looking. Her copper eyes held an expression he couldn't quite read. Most humans would have taken the contract. The money alone would have set up their descendants for generations. "Most humans haven't seen what I've seen," Nathan replied, meeting her gaze. "Haven't had to walk through the aftermath of their creations. Haven't had to count the bodies and know that each one exists because of something they built." Silence stretched between them, but it was different now. Less empty, more considered. "I killed 43 people on Castell," she said suddenly, her voice flat as recycled air. 43 enemy combatants in a single night. They gave me a medal for it, called me a hero. Her hands moved across her rifle with practiced efficiency, but there was a tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there before. The reports didn't mention that 20 of them were barely adults, conscripts who didn't even know how to hold their weapons properly. Nathan didn't offer platitudes or judgment. He understood the weight of that kind of confession, the way it sat in your chest like lead. "Is that why you left?" he asked. "I left because I started to enjoy it." The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The efficiency of it, the simplicity, no questions, no doubt, just the mission. She snapped a component back into place with perhaps more force than necessary. When you start thinking of people as problems to be solved, rather than lives to be preserved, it's time to walk away. Yet you still carry the rifle. A surgeon doesn't forget how to cut just because they've left the hospital. She paused, considering. And in this part of space, forgetting how to defend yourself is a luxury nobody can afford. Nathan found himself studying her profile as she worked. The scar was more prominent from this angle, but there were other marks too, a thin line across her throat that suggested someone had once tried to garrote her. A pattern of small circular scars on her visible forearm that looked suspiciously like torture marks. "You're staring," she said without looking up. "Sorry. It's just—" Nathan paused, choosing his words carefully. "You're not what I expected. Let me guess. You heard about the ice-cold killer who eats babies for breakfast and bathes in the blood of her enemies. Something like that, though I heard it was puppies, not babies. The sound that escaped her might have been a laugh, though it was so brief and quiet he couldn't be sure. Puppies would be inefficient, too small, not enough blood. It was such a deadpan delivery that Nathan found himself genuinely laughing, the sound echoing through the empty bay. When he looked over, there was the faintest upturn at the corner of her mouth. "You laugh loud for someone hiding from their past," she observed. "You smile rarely for someone with a sense of humor. Humor is a luxury nobody can afford." "Yes, you mentioned that." Nathan turned his attention back to the sensor array, using a micro-welder to repair a fractured connection. "Ever consider that maybe that's exactly why we need it?" She didn't respond, but he could feel her watching him now. The weight of her attention was almost physical, like standing in direct sunlight after too long in the dark. The station's announcement system crackled to life, the automated voice informing them that the morning shift would begin in 30 minutes. Neither of them moved to leave. "Why here?" Lyra asked suddenly. "There are other benches, other bays, other stations, for that matter." Nathan considered lying, offering some convenient excuse about the lighting or the tools. But something about the darkness outside the viewports and the woman who killed 43 people and still carried their weight made him honest. "Because 3 months ago, I watched you sit alone in the cantina for 4 hours. No one approached you. No one sat within 3 tables of you. And when you left, people actually relaxed." He adjusted his visor, pretending to focus on a particularly delicate wire. "I know what it's like to be that kind of alone. The kind where you're surrounded by people but might as well be in vacuum. So you decided to what saved me, fix the broken soldier like one of your machines." "No." Nathan set down his tools and turned to face her fully. "I decided to work on my projects in a quiet corner where someone else was also working on theirs. No saving, no fixing, just parallel existence." She studied him for a long moment, those copper eyes seeming to measure something beyond what was visible. Then she returned to her rifle, but the set of her shoulders had changed, loosened perhaps a fraction. "The coupling matrix on that sensor array is also misaligned," she said after a moment. "I know. Do you actually know how to fix anything? Or do you just like taking things apart?" Says the woman who has stripped and rebuilt the same rifle 3 times in the past hour. "It's called maintenance. It's called having nothing better to do at 3 in the morning." This time the laugh was definite, short and sharp but real. "Fair point, Dr. Cole." The use of his name surprised him. He hadn't introduced himself, which meant she had known who he was from the beginning. Of course she had. Someone like Lyra Vale didn't survive this long without knowing exactly who was in her space. "Nathan," he said. "Dr. Cole was the man who built weapons. I'm just Nathan now." "Just Nathan." She seemed to test the words, weigh them. "And I suppose you expect me to be just Lyra." "I expect you to be whoever you want to be. That's kind of the point of places like this. Isn't it the edge of civilized space? Where everyone's running from something or toward something else." "And which are you running from or toward?" Nathan picked up the sensor array again, examining the repairs he'd made. "Still figuring that out. You..." "Both. Neither." She shrugged. A surprisingly human gesture from someone the station treated like she was half myth. "Depends on the day." The morning shift workers were beginning to filter into adjacent bays, their voices carrying through the thin walls. Soon, this space would be filled with noise and activity, and whatever strange bubble of honesty had formed between them would pop. "Same time tomorrow?" Nathan asked, beginning to pack up his tools. Lyra paused in her own packing. "This is my spot. Has been for 8 months." "I know. The scorch marks on the floor from your plasma rifle maintenance are pretty distinctive." He shouldered his bag, then added, "I'll bring better coffee. The stuff from the dispensers tastes like recycled coolant." You can't possibly know what recycled coolant tastes like. I've been on this station for 3 months. I've had the coffee. Trust me, I know. She stood, and he realized for the first time how tall she was, easily 2 meters, with the kind of coiled strength that suggested she could break him in half without breaking a sweat. But there was something else too, a weariness that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. I don't like earth coffee, she said finally. Too bitter. Noted. I'll bring Martian blend. They grow it in the hydroponics domes. Tastes like actual plants instead of burnt dirt. You're assuming I'll be here. You've been here every night for 8 months. You're a creature of habit. Captain Vale. Military training does that to a person. She tilted her head, studying him. You were never military. No, but I've built enough weapons for them to recognize the type. Everything in its place. Everything with a purpose. It's why you chose this spot, optimal sightlines to all entrances. Back to the wall. Multiple exit routes if needed. And you chose to sit in my blind spot. Nathan paused at that. He hadn't realized it. But she was right. The bench he'd chosen was the one place in her carefully constructed safe zone where she couldn't easily monitor him while working. Huh, he said. I didn't notice. Yes, you did. She slung her rifle case over her shoulder with practiced ease. Some part of you knew exactly where to sit to be both present and non-threatening. It's why I didn't immediately leave. Or maybe I just liked the lighting. The lighting is terrible everywhere in this bay. True. They stood there for a moment. Two people who had somehow managed to have an entire conversation about everything, except what they were actually talking about. The morning shift was getting louder, and soon someone would come in and shatter whatever this was. Martian blend, she said finally. No sugar. No sugar, he agreed. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Nathan. Yeah. The Alliance was wrong to destroy you for refusing that contract. Before he could respond, she was gone, moving through the doorway and into the corridor beyond with that same silent grace. Nathan stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. He'd come here to be alone, to work on his projects in peace, to avoid the weight of human interaction and the questions it brought. Instead, he'd found someone else doing the exact same thing. The sensor array in his hands beeped, indicating it was fully functional again. He looked at it, then at the spot where Lyra had been working. She'd left behind a single tool not forgotten, he realized, but deliberately placed. It was a precision calibrator, military grade, worth more than most people on the station made in a month. Nathan picked it up, noting the worn grip that suggested years of use. There was an inscription on the handle, written in Chiron script. He couldn't read it, but he recognized the format. Military designations usually included name, rank, and unit. He pocketed the calibrator next to the alignment tool she'd given him earlier. Tomorrow, he would bring coffee and return the calibrator. She would pretend she hadn't left it on purpose. They would work in silence that wasn't quite silence. Alone together in the small hours when the station pretended to sleep. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't anything that could be easily defined. But for two people carrying the weight of their pasts like shrapnel in their souls, it was enough. The lights in the bay flickered again, and Nathan finally understood why she chose this spot. It wasn't just the tactical advantages or the isolation. It was the way the failing lights made everything feel temporary, unreal. Like a space between spaces where the normal rules didn't quite apply. Tomorrow, he decided, he would bring 2 cups of coffee and see what happened when you offered a small kindness to someone who had forgotten what kindness looked like. As he left the bay, he could already hear the whispers starting. Someone had seen Captain Vile talking to someone. Actually talking. Not just issuing threats or negotiating contracts. By lunch, the entire station would be buzzing with rumors. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, he had a calibrator to examine and a coffee supplier to find. And maybe, just maybe, a reason to look forward to O300 for the first time in months. The station corridors were beginning to fill with the morning shift. Humans and aliens of a dozen species going about their business, carefully not making eye contact. Everyone nursing their own secrets and sorrows. Nathan moved through them like a ghost, already thinking about tomorrow night. About the woman who admitted to killing 43 people and somehow made it sound like a confession rather than a boast. He thought about her comment that he had chosen to sit in her blind spot and realized she was right. Some part of him had recognized another predator trying to pretend they were prey, another dangerous person trying to be anything but. The Alliance had been right about one thing: he was very good at creating weapons. They just hadn't realized that sometimes the most powerful thing you could create was a moment of understanding between two people who had forgotten how to be understood. The recycled air of Vega Crown tasted like metal and regret. But for the first time in 3 months, Nathan Cole didn't mind. He had a project to work on, a tool to return, and the strange comfort of knowing that tomorrow at 300 he wouldn't be alone in his not-aloneness. And neither would she. The Martian coffee turned out to be harder to find than Nathan had anticipated. 3 vendors, 2 bribes, and 1 very uncomfortable conversation with a Rillan smuggler later. He stood outside the maintenance bay at 0255, holding 2 thermal cups that had cost him nearly a week's worth of repair jobs. He could hear her already inside, the distinctive whine of a plasma cutter slicing through metal. Nathan paused at the threshold, struck by how quickly this had become something he looked forward to. 3 days. It had only been 3 days since their first conversation, but already the rhythm felt established. She didn't look up when he entered, but her shoulders shifted slightly, acknowledgement without acknowledgement. Nathan set 1 cup at the edge of her workbench, careful not to disturb the precisely arranged tools, then settled at his own station. "It's still hot," he said unnecessarily. "I can see the steam." They worked in silence for 10 minutes before she reached for the cup. The first sip was careful, testing. The second was longer. She didn't say thank you, but she didn't need to. The fact that she drank it at all was acknowledgement enough. Nathan had brought a damaged navigation module tonight, something he'd bought off a scrapper who swore it was from a first-generation colony ship. Half the components were fried beyond recognition, but the core processor might be salvageable. He lost himself in the work, mapping circuits and testing connections, until Lyra's voice cut through his concentration. "You're doing it wrong." He looked up to find her standing behind him, close enough that he could smell the ozone from her plasma cutter, mixed with something else, gunpowder maybe, or just the particular scent of someone who lived with weapons. "The processor has a hidden secondary board," she continued, reaching past him to point at an innocuous panel. "First-gen colony ships used redundant systems for everything. Your main board is slag, but if the secondary is intact..." She trailed off, already picking up his tools. Nathan watched as her fingers, the same ones that had killed 43 people in one night, delicately pried open the panel to reveal a pristine circuit board underneath. "How did you know that?" "I served on a retrofit crew before..." She stopped abruptly, handing him back his tools. "Before. We gutted dozens of these old ships. Before she became Captain Vale. Before Castell. Before whatever had turned her into the station's local boogeyman." Nathan filed the information away and got back to work on the now accessible processor. "The coffee's not terrible," she said after another stretch of silence. "High praise. Don't let it go to your head." The next night, she brought food, some kind of Chiron field rations that tasted like cardboard soaked in protein paste, but had enough calories to keep someone fighting for days. Nathan ate it without complaint, recognizing the gesture for what it was: reciprocity, the careful building of equal exchange that meant neither of them owed the other anything. By the end of the first week, they had developed an entire language of silence. The slight tap of her finger on the bench meant she needed a specific tool that was closer to his station. The way he cleared his throat meant he was about to try something potentially explosive, and she might want to shield her work. When she hummed a low, almost inaudible sound, it meant she was stuck on a problem. When he spun his chair in a complete circle, it meant he'd figured something out. "You're cheerful tonight," she observed on day 9, not looking up from the sniper scope she was recalibrating. Nathan realized he'd been whistling an old Earth tune his grandmother used to sing. "Got paid today. Enough to cover rent and maybe eat something that doesn't come from a synthesizer." The noodle place on level 5 uses real vegetables. Real as in grown in soil real, or real as in at least originated from plant matter at some point real. The second one, but they use actual spices, not flavor simulants. It was the closest they'd come to suggesting they eat together, and Nathan was careful not to push it. "I'll check it out." She went back to her scope, but a few minutes later said, "They're closed on station Wednesdays. Some religious observance from the owner's homeworld." "Good to know." On day 12, Nathan arrived to find someone else in the bay, a massive Gorvani mercenary with arms like tree trunks and scars that crisscrossed his scaled hide like a map of violence. He stood too close to Lyra's bench, leaning in with the kind of aggressive intimacy that made Nathan's hand instinctively reach for a weapon he didn't carry. "Come on, Vale," the mercenary was saying. "One job, the pay's good, and you know you missed the action." "I said no, Corax." "You said no yesterday. Today's a new day." Nathan made noise entering, deliberately knocking over a tool that clattered across the floor. Both Lyra and the mercenary turned. Corax's eyes, all 4 of them, narrowed as he took in Nathan's civilian clothes and obvious lack of combat modifications. "Who's this?" The question was directed at Lyra, but the sneer was all for Nathan. "None of your business," Lyra replied flatly. "Doesn't look like much. This your new type. Vile soft weak. I remember when you had standards." Nathan continued to his bench, setting down his bag with deliberate calm. "You must be Corax. I've heard about you." "Have you now?" The mercenary straightened to his full height, nearly 3 meters of muscle, and barely contained violence. "And what have you heard, little human?" "That you once lost a drinking contest to a Terran grandmother on Bahia Station. She was 93, if I remember correctly." The bay went very still. Corax's scales shifted from green to a dangerous red. "You trying to be funny?" "No, just accurate, Mrs. Patterson. Wasn't it runs a boarding house near the docks? Lovely woman. Makes excellent cookies." Corax took a step toward him, but Lyra's voice cut through the tension like a monomolecular blade. "He's under my protection." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. On a station like Vega Crown, protection from Captain Lyra Vale meant something. It meant that any harm to Nathan would be answered with the kind of violence that left bodies unidentifiable. Corax's scales shifted through several colors: anger, calculation, and finally a grudging yellow of retreat. "This isn't over, Vile." "It was over when I said no the first time. You just weren't listening." After the mercenary left, trailing threats and sulfur-scented pheromones, Nathan and Lyra worked in silence for nearly an hour. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't need you to intervene." "I know. Then why did you—" Nathan considered his words carefully. "Because nobody should have to deal with that kind of persistent asshole alone. And because I really did hear about the drinking contest. Mrs. Patterson sends me cookies sometimes." "You're lying." "About the cookies, never. She uses real chocolate, not the synthesized stuff." Lyra turned to look at him fully, those copper eyes unreadable. "Under my protection" was excessive, but effective. "It means I'm responsible for you now, in the eyes of every mercenary, bounty hunter, and criminal on this station. I apologize for the inconvenience." She went back to her scope, but not before Nathan caught what might have been amusement flickering across her features. "You're not what I expected from a weapons designer." Former weapons designer, and you're not what I expected from someone with your reputation. What did you expect? Less precision, more random violence. Disappointing you. Quite the opposite. On day 15, Nathan brought a chess set and actual physical board with carved pieces he'd won in a card game years ago. He set it up between their benches without a word. Lyra ignored it for an hour, then moved a pawn while he was deep in a delicate soldering job. By morning, they were 3 games in, with her winning 2. You play like a strategist, she said, capturing his queen with a move he hadn't seen coming. You play like someone who learned in combat conditions. Close, prison camp. Nothing else to do for 6 months but play chess and plan escape routes. She said it casually, like mentioning the weather. But Nathan noticed the way her hand tightened on the captured piece. 6 months in a prison camp. He wondered if that's where some of her scars came from, but didn't ask. She'd tell him, or she wouldn't. That was their way. Day 18 brought the first real test of their strange partnership. Nathan was working on a particularly volatile power cell when it destabilized. The whine of building energy filled the bay, the kind of sound that preceded explosions that took out entire decks. Move, Lyra's command cut through his freeze response. She was already there, shoving him aside and grabbing the cell with her bare hands. The energy discharge should have killed her, but her suit, which he now realized was military-grade bio-armor, absorbed most of it. She hurled the cell into the emergency containment chute, just as it detonated. The explosion safely vented into space. Nathan found himself on the floor, Lyra's body shielding him from the shrapnel that had escaped before the chute sealed. For a moment, they stayed frozen like that, her weight pressing him down, her breathing harsh in his ear. "You're an idiot," she said finally, rolling off him. "Thank you." That wasn't a compliment. "Thank you anyway." She helped him up, and he noticed her hand was shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the energy discharge. The bio-armor had absorbed most of it, but not all. "Let me see," he said, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. "It's fine." "It's not fine. You're showing signs of neural feedback. If we don't discharge that properly." "I said it's fine." But she sat down anyway, letting him examine her hand. The fingertips were slightly blackened, and he could see the telltale lightning patterns of electrical burns traveling up under her sleeve. "I need to see the full extent," he said quietly. She hesitated, then unsealed her suit to the elbow. The burns were worse than he'd thought, and older scars made a crosshatch pattern with the new damage. Nathan worked in silence, applying neural gel and burn patches with the same precision he used on his machines. "You've done this before," she observed. "Lab accidents. Turns out weapons designers are prone to blowing themselves up." "How many times?" "Enough to get good at field medicine." Her arm was steady under his hands, the muscle beneath the damaged skin revealing years of conditioning. This close, he could see that what he'd taken for random scars were actually systematic torture marks, most likely, arranged in patterns designed to cause maximum pain without permanent damage. "Corex was right," she said suddenly. "This isn't my usual type." Nathan kept his focus on applying the last burn patch. "What is your usual type?" "Dead, mostly." "That must make for awkward dinner conversation." "You'd be surprised. The dead are excellent listeners." He finished with her arm and sat back. "All done. Try not to catch any more exploding power cells for at least a few days. Try not to create any more exploding power cells." "Where's the fun in that?" She resealed her suit, but not before he noticed her testing the flexibility of her fingers, checking for damage that might affect her trigger finger. Always the soldier, even when playing at being something else. Day 21 was when Nathan realized things had shifted from routine to something else. He arrived to find Lyra already there, but she wasn't working. She sat at her bench, staring at the small hollow frame he'd noticed the first night. From his angle, He could finally see the image a group of soldiers in Karen military uniforms. All young, all smiling, all very much alive. "My unit," she said without looking up. Before Castell, Nathan didn't ask how many survived. The answer was in the way she held the frame, like it might shatter if she breathed wrong. "They called us the Ghost Brigade," she continued. "Specialized in impossible missions. Zero visibility, zero support, zero margin for error." Sounds like a recruiting poster. I was on half the propaganda videos the Empire produced that year. Join the military. Be like Captain Vale, defender of the innocent. Her laugh was bitter. They left out the part where following orders meant killing those same innocents when they ended up on the wrong side of a political shift. Nathan moved to sit beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence. "Is that why you left?" "I left because I looked at that frame one day and couldn't remember their names. I could remember how they died, exactly where each shot hit, how long it took them to bleed out. But their names," she shook her head, "gone. That's when I knew I'd become exactly what they'd trained me to be, a weapon that had forgotten it was ever anything else." "But you kept the picture." "To remind myself, some sins don't get to be forgotten just because they're inconvenient." They sat in silence for a while, watching the station lights flicker outside the viewport. Finally, Nathan spoke. "I keep a list," he said. "Every weapon I designed. I researched what it was used for. Every conflict, every casualty count, every collateral damage report. It's 37 pages long now. Why torture yourself? Because someone should remember them as more than statistics. And because I need the weight of it, to make sure I never forget why I walked away." Lyra turned the frame face down, a gesture of closing that chapter for the night. "We're quite the pair, aren't we? The weapon maker and the weapon... Former weapon maker... Former weapon." She stood, stretching muscles that had been still too long. "Though I wonder sometimes if former is just a word we tell ourselves to sleep better." "Do you sleep better?" "No, No? Then at least we're honest about it." By day 24, the entire station had noticed their strange partnership. Nathan heard the whispers when he went for supplies, speculation about whether he was insane, suicidal, or secretly some kind of combat specialist. Lyra, for her part, seemed to find the rumors amusing. "Apparently, you're secretly an assassin, hired to kill me," she informed him one night, not looking up from the rifle she was modifying. "Really, how much am I being paid?" 50,000 credits. "That's insulting. You're worth at least 100,000. "That's what I said." The morning of day 27, Nathan arrived to find Lyra had rearranged the bay. Their benches, previously separated by that careful 3 meters, were now adjacent, not touching, but close enough that they could share tools without getting up. "More efficient," she said by way of explanation. Of course. But efficiency didn't explain why she'd also brought a second chair to her bench, or why there was a heating plate set up between their stations with 2 cups waiting. They worked closer now, the space between them measured in centimeters rather than meters. Nathan learned that she hummed Earth classical when concentrating on delicate work Bach, mostly, though sometimes Mozart. She learned that he talked to his machines, offering encouragement or threats depending on their cooperation. "You know they can't hear you," she said one night, as he coaxed a particularly stubborn processor to life. "Maybe not, but it makes me feel better. And when you threatened to throw that faulty capacitor out an airlock, that was a promise, not a threat." On day 30, the coffee machine in the bay finally gave up entirely, dying with a wheeze and a small puff of smoke. Nathan stared at it mournfully. "That's the 3rd one this month," he said. "You've been keeping track?" "I have a lot of free time." Lyra stood, picked up the machine, and carried it to her bench. "Move over." For the next 2 hours, they worked on it together, not because it was worth fixing, but because it had become part of their routine. Nathan handled the electronics, while Lyra rebuilt the mechanical components with military precision. When they finally got it working, the coffee it produced was somehow worse than before. "I think we made it angry," Nathan said, grimacing at the taste. "Machines don't get angry. This one does. This is definitely revenge coffee." She actually smiled at that, not much. Just a slight upturn of her lips. But it transformed her entire face. For a moment, Nathan could see who she might have been before the war, before the killing, before the weight of 43 lives, and who knew how many more settled on her shoulders. "You're staring again," she said. "Sorry, it's just you should smile more."
Why?
"Because it reminds you that you're human." "I'm not human, I'm Chiron." "You know what I mean." "Do I?" But she was still almost smiling, so Nathan counted it as a victory. The last night of the month, day 31 of their strange routine, Lyra brought something different to work on. Not a weapon, but a small mechanical bird, delicate and intricate, its wings designed to move with impossible grace. "My daughter loved these," she said quietly, and Nathan nearly dropped his tools. "You have a daughter." "Had..." The word was flat, final. "She died in the bombing of New Kyoto. Civilian transport caught in the crossfire. She was 6. Nathan felt the words like a physical blow. Everything made more sense now, the drinking alone, the self-imposed isolation, the way she held herself like she was one wrong move from shattering. What was her name? Aria. She wanted to be an engineer. Said she was going to build birds that could fly between the stars. Lyra's fingers moved carefully over the mechanical bird, adjusting microscopic gears. "I bought this for her birthday. Never got to give it to her." "How long ago?" 3 years, 4 months, 16 days. Nathan didn't offer platitudes or sympathy. Instead, he reached for his tools. "The left wing has a misaligned servo. May I?" She slid the bird over to him, and they worked on it together in silence. It took 3 hours to get it perfect, every gear meshing smoothly, every joint moving like liquid. When Nathan activated it, the bird spread its wings and sang a hauntingly beautiful melody that sounded like hope and heartbreak combined. "It's perfect," Lyra whispered. "She would have loved it." "Yes." Lyra reached out, letting the bird perch on her finger. "She would have." They watched the mechanical bird for a long time, its wings catching the flickering light of the failing overheads. Finally, Lyra spoke again. "This is why I don't let people close. Because it hurts too much when you lose them. Because I destroy everything I touch. My unit, my daughter, my humanity all gone because of choices I made or didn't make." "That's not..." "It is." She turned to look at him directly. "I need you to understand that. Whatever this is, whatever we're building here, I will eventually destroy it. It's what I do." Nathan met her gaze steadily. "Maybe. Or maybe you've just been alone so long you've forgotten that some things are stronger than your ability to break them." "You don't know me." "I know you saved my life when that power cell exploded. I know you bring me food when you think I'm not eating enough. I know you rearrange this entire bay to sit closer to someone you claim you're going to destroy. Those are just actions. Actions are all we are, Lyra. The rest is just stories we tell ourselves." She looked back at the bird, still singing its eternal song. "You should run. Find another bay, another station, another life. Stay away from me before you become another name on my list of regrets." "No. No. No. Because here's what I think you're so used to being a weapon that you've forgotten weapons don't choose their targets. People do. And right now, you're choosing to push me away because it's easier than admitting you might actually care about something again. You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? How many nights have we sat here? How many times have you fixed my mistakes, shared your food, protected me from people like Korax? You're not destroying anything. Lyra, you're building something, and it terrifies you. She stood abruptly, the bird falling silent as she caught it. "I should go." "You should, but you won't." She paused at the door, her back to him. "Why are you so sure?" "Because tomorrow is day 32, and you're nothing if not consistent. You'll be here at 0300 same as always, and I'll bring that terrible coffee. And we'll pretend this conversation never happened until you're ready to admit that being alone isn't the same as being safe." She left without another word, but the mechanical bird remained on the bench. Nathan picked it up carefully, noting how she'd left it positioned facing his station, wings spread as if ready to fly toward something new. He smiled to himself and began packing up his tools. Tomorrow would come, and with it, another night of shared silence and slowly dissolving walls. The bird was proof of that you don't share your deepest pain with someone you're planning to leave. As he headed back to his quarters, Nathan realized the whispers had stopped following him through the corridors. He'd become part of the station's landscape, now the crazy human who sat with Captain Vall and lived to tell about it. But they didn't understand what he was beginning to. Lyra Vale wasn't dangerous because she was a weapon. She was dangerous because she was a broken person, trying desperately not to care, and failing a little more each day. And Nathan, he was just stubborn enough to wait her out. The news came through the station's emergency broadcast system at 0800, jarring everyone awake with its piercing alert tone. Nathan had been in his quarters, trying to catch a few hours of sleep after another late night in the maintenance bay, when his comm unit erupted with the priority signal. "All personnel, this is Station Command. We have received a distress signal from the merchant convoy Celestial Path. Multiple vessels have been destroyed in Sector 94 Alpha. Survivors report hostile action from unknown attackers. All available emergency response teams are to report to Docking Bay 12 immediately." Nathan was already pulling on his boots when his personal comm chimed. Lyra's message was brief: "Bay, now." He found her standing in front of the main display screen in the maintenance bay, watching the news feeds with an expression he'd never seen before, cold fury mixed with something that looked almost like grief. On the screen, debris floated through space where 12 merchant vessels had been just hours before. The casualty count kept climbing as more data came in: 3,000 dead, 500 missing, presumed dead. "The Celestial Path was under my protection contract," she said, without turning around. "I was supposed to be on those ships." "Why weren't you?" "Because I've been here. Every night. With you." The words carried no accusation, just fact. But Nathan felt them like a weight settling on his chest. "Lyra, those were refugee ships." Her voice was steady, too steady. "Families fleeing the border conflicts. Children. They hired me because they knew my reputation would keep them safe. No one attacks ships under Vale's protection." "Someone did?" "Yes." She turned to face him, and her copper eyes were like molten metal. "Someone who knew I wasn't there. Someone who knew exactly when and where to strike. The implications hung between them. This wasn't random piracy or a crime of opportunity. This was planned, calculated, designed to send a message." Nathan moved to the secondary terminal, his fingers flying across the interface. "The station would have logged all departures and communications. If someone knew you weren't on those ships, they had inside information." Lyra was already at another terminal, pulling up shipping manifests and crew rosters. The convoy's route was classified. Only 3 groups had access: the convoy leadership, Station Command, and the protection detail. Which was just you. Just me. They worked in tandem, pulling data streams and cross-referencing logs. The maintenance bay's displays soon filled with information: ship registrations, passenger lists, final communications. Nathan noticed something in the pattern of the attacks. "Look at this," he said, highlighting several data points. The attackers hit specific ships first, not the most valuable ones, but the ones with the best defensive systems. They knew exactly which vessels to disable, to leave the others vulnerable. Lyra leaned over his shoulder, close enough that he could feel the tension radiating from her. And here they bypassed the cargo haulers entirely. No attempt to steal anything. This wasn't piracy. This was execution. Station security arrived then. 6 officers in full tactical gear. The lead, a human named Commander Torres, looked between Nathan and Lyra with barely concealed suspicion. "Captain Vail, we need to ask you some questions about your contract with the Celestial Path convoy." "Ask," Lyra said, not moving from the terminal. "Privately, at security headquarters." "No." Torres's hand moved to his sidearm. "That wasn't a request." The temperature in the bay seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lyra turned slowly, and every officer took an involuntary step back. Nathan had heard stories about what Lyra could do when cornered. Apparently, so had they. "Commander," Nathan said, stepping between them. "Captain Vile is analyzing the attack patterns. If you want to find who did this, stay out of this. Dr. Cole, this doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does." Nathan pulled up his personal identification on the display. "I'm a registered technical consultant for Captain Vale's operations. That makes me part of her protection detail. Legally speaking, it was a lie. Of course. He'd never filed any such paperwork, but the way Lyra glanced at him suggested she'd back his play. Torres scowled. "Fine, but we need answers. The Alliance is already sending an investigation team. They'll be here in 6 hours." The Alliance. Lyra's voice could have frozen hydrogen. Since when does the Alliance care about refugee convoys? Since those refugees were carrying something the Alliance wants back. Torres seemed to realize he'd said too much. "You have 6 hours to provide a full report. Don't leave the station." After security left, Lyra turned to Nathan. "Technical consultant. Would you prefer emotional support human?" Despite everything, she almost smiled. What were those refugees really carrying? Nathan was already diving deeper into the data. "Give me a minute." There, hidden in the passenger manifest, Dr. Sarah Hendricks, traveling with her family. Except Dr. Hendricks died 2 years ago. Cover identity? Has to be. And look at the cargo manifest for her ship's scientific equipment. Climate-controlled storage, biometric locks. Whatever she was transporting, it was important enough to hide among refugees. Lyra's fingers flew across her terminal. "I've seen this pattern before. During the war, the Empire would hide weapons researchers among civilian populations. The Alliance did the same." She paused, staring at something on her screen. "Nathan, look at this." She'd pulled up a recovered data fragment from one of the destroyed ships. It was heavily corrupted, but parts were readable. Nathan felt his blood chill as he recognized the technical specifications. That's my design." "What?" "The weapon configuration they're describing. I created that 3 years ago, before I refused the Gorham contract." He pulled up his old files, comparing them to the fragment. "Someone modified it, made it worse, but the base design is mine." "The weapon you refused to build?" "No, a different one. A targeted EMP system designed to disable specific ship systems while leaving others functional. I thought it would reduce casualties in ship-to-ship combat." His voice turned bitter. "Instead, someone used it to turn those refugee ships into floating coffins." Lyra was quiet for a moment, processing. "Then, who had access to your designs?" "After I left anyone in the Alliance Weapons Division, the designs belonged to them, not me." "Names, Nathan, I need names." He hesitated, then pulled up a secured file. 5 people had full access. Admiral Marcus Webb, who oversaw the program. Dr. James Morrison, who took over after I left. Commander Rachel Price, military liaison. And 2 others who've since died, one in an accident, one in the border conflicts. Webb is stationed at Proxima Station. Morrison works for a private contractor now, Helios Defense. Price. Lyra's expression darkened. Price is here. She arrived 3 days ago. That's not possible. I would have heard. Not if she came in under a false identity. Which she did. Lyra pulled up station records. Rebecca Pearson, independent trader. But the biometric signature matches Commander Rachel Price. They looked at each other. The implications clear. Someone involved in Nathan's old weapons program was on the station, arriving just before the convoy was attacked. We need more evidence, Nathan said. We need her to confess. That's not going to happen. It will. Lyra moved to her weapons cache, beginning to gear up. People always talk when properly motivated. Lyra, no. If you go after her. Those were my people. Nathan. 3,000 lives I was supposed to protect. And torturing one person won't bring them back. She spun on him. And for a moment he saw the killer everyone feared. Then what do you suggest? Wait for the Alliance to investigate themselves. They'll bury this. Just like they bury everything that makes them look bad. Nathan thought quickly. No. We investigate. But we do it smart. If Price is involved, she's not working alone. Someone fed her the information about your absence. Someone helped plan the attack. We need the whole network, not just one node. And how do we get that? The same way I used to design weapons, by understanding the system and finding its weaknesses. He moved to his workbench, pulling out a case of equipment he hadn't touched in months. I still have some friends in the Alliance Technical Division. People who owe me favors or feel guilty about what happened. Let me reach out. The Alliance destroyed you. Why would anyone there help? Because not everyone agreed with what they did. And because some of them have consciences that keep them up at night. Just like ours do. Lyra watched him work for a moment, then returned to her terminal. I'll track Price's movements since she arrived. If she's made contact with anyone, she has... Nathan pulled up a communication log. 3 encrypted messages to someone on the station. I can't break the encryption, but I can trace the recipient. There. Dock worker named Marcus Flynn. I know that name. Lyra's fingers flew across the keys. He was on duty when the Celestial Path convoy departed. He would have had access to all the departure codes and security protocols. So, Price gets the information from Flynn, passes it to whoever actually carried out the attack. But who and why? Nathan's secured comm chimed. One of his old colleagues, Dr. Lisa Park, had responded to his inquiry. He read her message, his expression darkening. What is it? Lyra asked. Morrison, the one who took over my position. He's been selling modified versions of my designs to private military contractors. But a month ago, he suddenly came into a large amount of money, enough to buy a small moon. Payment for the convoy attack. Or for something bigger. Lisa says there have been rumors about a new weapon, something that could change the balance of power in the border conflicts. Lyra stood very still, processing. The convoy wasn't the goal. It was a test. What? Think about it. A convoy with refugee ships, different defensive configurations, traveling through open space. It's the perfect test environment for a new weapon system. Her voice was cold, clinical. Someone wanted to see if the modified version of your EMP design could take down an entire convoy quickly and efficiently, and leave no witnesses. Except they didn't count on the emergency beacons having independent power sources. Some survivors made it to escape pods. Nathan felt sick. Those families died so someone could test a weapon. Welcome to war, Nathan. This is what it really looks like, not heroes and villains, but profit margins and acceptable losses. They worked in silence for another hour, building a database of connections. Price to Flynn. Flynn to an unnamed account that had paid him 50,000 credits. Morrison's sudden wealth coinciding with the weapons development. And underneath it all, a web of alliance contracts and private military corporations that profited from every conflict, every death. I have something, Lyra said suddenly. She'd been reviewing the survivor testimonies. One of the escape pods recorded partial sensor data during the attack. The attacking ships. They're using a hybrid signature. Part alliance, part hegemony. That's not possible. Those two powers have been secretly trading technology for years. I saw evidence of it during the war, but could never prove it. She turned to face him. Nathan, what if this isn't about the border conflicts at all? What if someone is trying to start a larger war? The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. A weapon that can disable entire fleets. Evidence of technology sharing between supposed enemies. Attacks on refugee convoys to destabilize the neutral zones. Someone wants the peace accords to fail. Someone who profits from war. They looked at each other, the weight of the revelation settling between them. This was bigger than just one attack, one tragedy. This was about powers playing games with entire populations, using Nathan's designs and Lyra's reputation as pieces on their board. Lyra's comm unit chimed. She read the message, her expression hardening further. "What now?" Nathan asked. "The Alliance investigation team has arrived early. They're demanding all my logs and contracts related to the convoy." She looked up at him. "And they specifically want to question you about your weapons designs. They know we're investigating." Which means, Price warned them. She's not just involved. She's running this operation. Lyra moved fast, downloading all their data onto a secured drive. "We need to get this information off station before they lock us down." "I know someone," Nathan said, already sending an encrypted message. "Journalist named Alex Reeves. They've been investigating Alliance corruption for years. If we can get them this data, they'll be dead within a day. Not if we're smart about it. Not if we make it public enough that killing them would only confirm the story." The door to the maintenance bay hissed open. Commander Torres was back, this time with a full Alliance security team. Behind them stood Commander Rachel Price, no longer hiding behind her false identity. She looked older than Nathan remembered, harder, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much and decided to profit from it instead of walking away. "Dr. Cole," she said, her voice carrying false warmth. "It's been too long." "Not long enough, Rachel. That's Commander Price to you. You lost the right to familiarity when you betrayed the Alliance." "I refuse to commit genocide, and if that's betrayal, I'll wear it proudly." Price's smile was sharp. "Always so dramatic. Captain Vale, you're under arrest for dereliction of duty resulting in mass casualties. Dr. Cole, you're wanted for questioning regarding stolen weapon designs." "Stolen?" Nathan laughed bitterly. "I created those designs, and the Alliance owns them. Your recent access to classified databases suggests you've been attempting to steal them back. It was a setup, perfectly orchestrated. They'd be detained, probably disappeared, and the truth about the convoy would die with them." Nathan saw Lyra tense, calculating odds, measuring distances. She could probably take down half the security team before they stopped her. But that would only prove their guilt in the eyes of anyone watching. "Wait," Nathan said, stepping forward. "I'll come quietly, but I want guarantees. Legal representation, public trial, full transparency." Price laughed. "You're in no position to make demands." "Actually, I am." He held up his comm unit. "I've been streaming this entire conversation to 12 different news outlets. They're particularly interested in why Commander Rachel Price was on the station under a false identity just before the convoy was attacked. It was a bluff. He hadn't had time to set up any streams. But Price didn't know that." Her eyes narrowed, calculating. "You're making a mistake, Nathan." "No. I made a mistake when I ever trusted the Alliance. This is me correcting it." The standoff stretched taut, everyone waiting for someone else to make the first move. Then, Lyra did something unexpected. She laughed. Not her usual bitter sound, but something lighter, almost amused. "You know what I find interesting, Commander Price," she said, moving to stand beside Nathan. "You knew I wasn't on those ships. You knew exactly when to strike. But you didn't know one crucial thing. And what's that? I always leave insurance. She pulled out a small device, its surface covered in blinking lights. Dead man's switch, connected to every piece of data we've collected. I don't check in every 12 hours, and everything gets broadcast across the entire station network. Every dirty deal, every murdered refugee, every credit you've taken in exchange for innocent lives. Price's composure finally cracked. You're bluffing. You've read my file. Do I seem like someone who bluffs? The silence stretched again, heavier this time. Nathan could see Price calculating, weighing options. Finally, she stepped back. Torres, release them. We'll handle this through official channels. Commander Torres looked confused. I said release them. We have no evidence of wrongdoing at this time. As the security teams filed out, Price paused at the door. This isn't over. No, Lyra agreed. It's just beginning. After they were alone, Nathan slumped against his workbench. Dead man's switch. Modified proximity mine. Completely harmless, but she didn't know that. Lyra set the device down carefully. Your streaming bluff was good too. Who says it was a bluff? Nathan held up his comm unit, showing active connections to multiple news outlets. I started streaming the moment Price walked in. They have everything. Lyra stared at him. When did you? While you were grabbing your fake dead man switch. I figured we needed actual insurance. You're more devious than you look. I learned from the best. They stood there for a moment, the weight of what they'd discovered and what they'd just done settling around them. 3,000 people were still dead. The conspiracy was still in motion. But now, at least, someone knew. Someone was watching. They'll come for us, Lyra said quietly. Price, Morrison, whoever's really behind this, we've made ourselves targets. I know. You could still walk away, disappear, find another station, another life. Nathan looked at her. This woman who carried so much death in her hands, yet had risked everything to protect refugee ships. Could you walk away from this? No. Then neither can I. Lyra nodded slowly, accepting. So what do we do now? Now we find out who's really behind this, and we stop them. Just like that? Just like that. After all, I'm very good at taking things apart, and you're very good at precision strikes. Together. He managed a grim smile. We might just be dangerous enough to matter. The lights in the bay flickered their usual malfunction, but somehow, it felt like agreement. Outside, the station continued its rotation, indifferent to the conspiracies and tragedies within. But in this small space, two broken people had found purpose again. And perhaps, Nathan thought as he watched Lyra begin planning their next move with military efficiency, mixed with a new kind of determination. That was enough. For now. The cargo transport Meridian Drift was exactly the kind of ship that nobody looked at twice. Rust-streaked hull, mismatched engine configurations, and a registration history that changed hands so often it might as well have been written in pencil. Which made it perfect for what Nathan and Lyra had planned. They stood in the shadows of Docking Bay 39, watching the ship's loading crew argue over a manifest discrepancy. Nathan had spent the last 48 hours creating false identities for them both, while Lyra had tracked down the ship Commander Price had been using for her clandestine meetings. You're sure about this? Nathan asked, adjusting the maintenance worker coveralls that didn't quite fit right. Price has been meeting someone on this ship every 3 days. Her last visit was yesterday, which means we have 70 hours before she returns. Lyra checked her modified scanner one more time. The ship's security is decent, but nothing I haven't seen before. That's not what I meant. She turned to look at him, her copper eyes unreadable in the dim light. If you're having second thoughts. No, I'm having third and fourth thoughts, but I'm still here. Why? It was a genuine question, the kind she'd started asking more often since the convoy attack. Nathan considered his answer carefully. Because 3 days ago, you showed me footage from one of the survivor pods. A little girl, couldn't have been more than 8, asking when her parents were coming to get her. He met her gaze. I designed the weapon that made her an orphan. I can't undo that, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again. Lyra nodded, understanding in a way that didn't require words. They moved toward the ship, their fake credentials getting them past the board security guard who barely looked up from his gaming tablet. The interior of the Meridian Drift was a maze of narrow corridors and questionable modifications. Someone had retrofitted the cargo hauler for purposes it was never designed for, hidden compartments behind false panels. Electromagnetic shielding that would hide whatever was inside from most scanners. And a computer core that belonged on a military vessel, not a civilian transport. This way, Lyra whispered, leading him through a service corridor that smelled of oxidized metal and old fear. Her movements were liquid shadow, and Nathan tried to match her silence with limited success. You sound like a Gorvani trying to tap dance, she murmured. Not all of us were trained in stealth operations. Clearly, they reached the computer core without incident, which somehow made Nathan more nervous. In his experience, things that seemed too easy usually were. Lyra pulled out a specialized interface kit, military grade, the kind that could crack most civilian encryptions in seconds. But the moment she connected it, alarms started screaming. Military encryption, she said, fingers flying across the interface. They're using Alliance protocols. Can you crack it? Give me 3 minutes. Footsteps thundered in the corridor. Nathan grabbed a plasma cutter from the wall. I don't think we have 3 minutes. The first guard rounded the corner, and Nathan acted on instinct, firing the plasma cutter at the overhead lighting panel. The corridor plunged into darkness just as energy bolts sizzled past his head. Nice shot, Lyra said, not looking up from her work. I was aiming for the guard. Even better. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in hellish red. Nathan could see 3 guards advancing, using the doorways as cover. He fired again, this time intentionally targeting infrastructure ventilation pipes that released clouds of steam, electrical panels that showered sparks. Creating chaos isn't a fighting style, Lyra observed, still working. It is when you're not a fighter. One guard got too close. Nathan swung the plasma cutter like a club, catching the man in the temple. The guard dropped, and Nathan immediately felt his breakfast threatening to make a return appearance. He'd designed weapons that had killed thousands, but he'd never personally hit someone before. Don't think about it, Lyra said, still typing. Just act. Easy for you to say? No, it isn't. 2 more guards appeared, and these were professional synchronized movements, overlapping fields of fire. Nathan's chaos approach wasn't going to work this time. Then Lyra moved. Nathan had heard stories about how she fought, but seeing it was something else entirely. She flowed from the computer terminal to the first guard, using his own momentum to send him into the wall. The second guard fired, but she was already inside his reach, her elbow connecting with his throat in a strike that was precisely calibrated to incapacitate without killing. The fight lasted maybe 4 seconds. Both guards were down, unconscious, but breathing. Got it, she said, returning to the terminal as if nothing had happened. Downloading now. Nathan stared at the unconscious guards. You could have killed them. Yes. But you didn't. You're rubbing off on me. It's annoying. But there was something in her voice that suggested she didn't find it annoying at all. The download completed, and they ran. More guards were converging on their position, and the ship's automatic lockdown was sealing bulkheads behind them. They reached a maintenance shaft just as the corridor they'd been in flooded with security. Up, Lyra commanded, and they climbed. The shaft was barely wide enough for Nathan's shoulders, and every sound they made echoed like thunder. Below them, he could hear guards coordinating their search pattern. They're heading for the dorsal airlock, someone said. Cut them off at Junction 4. Lyra, suddenly stopped climbing. Nathan, face pressed against her boots, tried not to think about how this would look out of context. "What's wrong?" he whispered. "They're hurting us. They want us to go to the dorsal airlock." "Trap." "Definitely." She started moving again, but sideways now, into a ventilation duct that Nathan hadn't even noticed. They crawled through air that tasted of recycled proteins and desperation until they reached a grating that looked out over a cargo hold. Below them, Nathan saw something that made his blood freeze. Weapons, hundreds of them, all based on his designs, but modified, twisted into things he'd never intended. The EMP devices that had disabled the convoy, plasma weapons that could burn through civilian shields like tissue paper, and in the center, something new, a massive device he didn't recognize, but whose purpose he could guess from the radiation warnings plastered all over it. "Planet killer," Lyra breathed. "Those madmen actually built one." Nathan felt sick. The theoretical designs for such a weapon had existed for decades, but no one had been insane enough to build one. It could crack a planet's crust, rendering entire worlds uninhabitable. "We need to—" The grating gave way. They fell 3 meters into the cargo hold. Nathan, landing hard on his shoulder with a pain that suggested something had separated that shouldn't have. Lyra rolled with the impact, coming up in a combat stance. They weren't alone. Dr. James Morrison stood near the planet killer, looking exactly as Nathan remembered him, immaculate suit, perfectly styled hair, and the smile of someone who'd never met a moral boundary he couldn't rationalize crossing. "Nathan," Morrison said warmly, "so good to see you again. And the infamous Captain Vale. What an honor." "Morrison." Nathan struggled to his feet, cradling his injured shoulder. "I should have known you'd be involved in this." "Involved, my dear friend. I'm running this entire operation. Well, the technical side at least. Commander Price handles the messier aspects. Like murdering refugees." Morrison's smile didn't waver. "Casualties of progress. You always were too sentimental, Nathan. It's what held you back. It's what kept me human." "Human," Morrison laughed. "Such a limiting concept. Do you know what I've learned since you left humanity isn't special? We're not unique. The galaxy is full of species that are stronger, faster, smarter. The only thing that makes us competitive is our willingness to do what others won't. Like genocide. Like survival. The border conflicts are just the beginning. The hegemony, the Karen Empire. Even our supposed allies, they're all preparing for the real war. The one that will determine who controls the galaxy for the next millennium." Lyra stepped forward slightly, and Nathan noticed her hand moving towards something in her pocket. "And you think these weapons will win that war?" "I know they will. Your friend Nathan designed them, after all. He just lacked the vision to see their true potential." "My vision was fine," Nathan said. "I just wasn't willing to burn worlds to light my way." "No. Then why design weapons at all? Every creation of yours was meant to kill more efficiently. You just dressed it up in pretty words like reducing casualties and precision targeting. But deep down, you knew what you were building." The words hit harder than Nathan cared to admit. Morrison wasn't entirely wrong. Every weapon designer told themselves stories about defense and protection. But at the end of the day, they were creating tools of death. "You're right," Nathan said quietly. "I did know, which is why I walked away. And accomplished what your designs still exist. They're still being used. The only difference is that you're not getting paid for it." Lyra's hand emerged from her pocket, holding a small device. "Actually, there's another difference. We're going to stop you." Morrison laughed again. "With what, that little scrambler you're holding? Please. Did you think we wouldn't scan you the moment you entered the ship?" The cargo hold's doors opened, and a dozen guards filed in, weapons trained on them. Commander Price entered last, looking satisfied. "I told you they'd come," she said to Morrison. Idealists are so predictable. Indeed. Morrison walked closer, studying them like specimens. You know, I actually hoped you'd join us. Nathan, your mind, properly motivated, could change everything. My mind is properly motivated, just not in the direction you'd prefer. Pity. Morrison turned to Price. Kill them. Make it look like they died attacking the ship. We'll spin it as terrorists trying to steal weapons. Wait, Lyra said. Don't you want to know how we found you? Price hesitated. What do you mean? This ship. This operation. Did you really think we just stumbled onto it? Lyra smiled, and it was the expression of a predator. We had help. Someone on the inside who's tired of your games. Morrison and Price exchanged glances. You're bluffing. Am I? How do you think we got past your security so easily? Why do you think your guards took so long to respond? She pulled out a data pad, showing a communication log. One of your own sold you out. Nathan caught on to what she was doing. They were very helpful, provided codes, schedules, even the location of this cargo hold. Impossible, Price snapped. Every person in this operation has been vetted. Even Marcus Flynn, Lyra asked casually. Price went very still. Flynn is dead. He died in the convoy attack. Did he, or did you just assume he was on one of those ships? Lyra tapped the data pad. Funny thing about people you betray, sometimes they survive, and sometimes they want revenge. It was a complete fabrication, but Nathan saw doubt creeping into Price's expression. In operations like this, paranoia was always just below the surface. Morrison, however, wasn't buying it. Nice try, but Flynn's body was recovered. I identified it myself. Bodies can be faked, Nathan said. You should know you've faked enough of them. Enough, Morrison said. Kill them. But Price held up a hand. Wait, if there is a leak. There isn't. But if there is, we need to know who else they've contacted. She moved closer to Lyra. Tell us who your contact is, and I'll make your deaths quick. Counteroffer, Lyra said. You let us go, and we don't activate the virus Nathan uploaded to your computer core 3 minutes ago. Morrison laughed. We have the best security in... Every screen in the cargo hold suddenly displayed the same message. Justice for the celestial path. That's impossible, Morrison breathed. No, Nathan said, pulling out his own data pad. That's 3 years of designing your security systems and leaving myself backdoors. You really should have changed the core protocols when you took over my position. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later. But in that moment of darkness, Lyra moved. Nathan heard impacts, cries of pain, the distinctive sound of bones breaking. When the red emergency lights came on, 6 guards were down and Lyra had acquired 2 energy rifles. She tossed one to Nathan. Can you shoot? I designed it. I better be able to shoot it. They moved together, using the weapon crates as cover. The remaining guards opened fire, but without their targeting systems, which Nathan's virus had helpfully disabled, their accuracy was severely compromised. You're just delaying the inevitable, Morrison shouted. This ship is locked down. You can't escape. We don't need to escape, Nathan replied, firing at a guard who'd gotten too bold. We just need to survive for another 43 seconds. What happens in 43 seconds? The virus finishes uploading all your data to every major news outlet in 3 systems. Weapons manifests, buyer lists, and oh yes, the full recording of you admitting to murdering 3,000 refugees. Morrison's face went pale. You're lying. 30 seconds, Nathan said conversationally. Though I should mention, the virus also has a fun little subroutine. It's going to overload every weapon in this hold in about 5 minutes, Lyra. How long did we set the timer for? 4 minutes, 30 seconds, she replied, dropping another guard with a precision shot. Right, so you might want to start evacuating. Price was already moving, speaking rapidly into her comm. All hands, abandon ship. Repeat. Abandon ship. The cargo hold erupted into chaos. Guards fled. Morrison screamed orders that no one listened to, and Price disappeared through a side door. Should we actually run? Lyra asked, still firing at anyone who got too close. Oh, definitely. I wasn't lying about the overload. They ran, following the stream of panicking crew members toward the escape pods. The ship's automated voice counted down their remaining time with mechanical indifference. 3 minutes to core overload. They reached the escape pod bay to find most of the pods already launched. One remained, but Morrison stood in front of it, holding a military-grade plasma rifle. You've destroyed everything, he snarled. Years of work, billions in investment. 3,000 lives, Nathan interrupted. You seem to keep forgetting those. Acceptable losses. No such thing, Lyra said and shot him. It was a stun round Nathan could tell from the frequency of the discharge. Morrison crumpled, unconscious but alive. We should kill him, Lyra said, standing over his body. Probably. But we won't. No. We'll let him live with what he's done. In a prison cell, hopefully, but alive. They dragged Morrison into the escape pod. Nathan's shoulders screamed in protest, but adrenaline was wonderful for ignoring pain. The pod launched just as the automated voice announced, 1 minute to core overload. Through the pod's viewport, Nathan watched the meridian drift recede. 30 seconds later, it began to glow. Then it exploded, taking millions of credits worth of illegal weapons with it. Think that'll stop them? Nathan asked. No, but it'll slow them down. They floated in silence for a moment, the unconscious form of Morrison between them. Finally, Lyra spoke. The virus upload that was brilliant. Thanks. Learn from the best. I don't recall teaching you computer viruses. No. But you taught me about misdirection. Make them focus on one threat while the real danger comes from somewhere else. She almost smiled. You'd have made a good soldier. I'll stick to engineering. Thanks. Less chance of getting shot at. You literally just got shot at for 20 minutes. Yes, but that was unusual. In engineering, getting shot at is the exception, not the rule. In my experience, everyone gets shot at eventually. That's a cheerful thought. The pod's emergency beacon activated, and soon they could see station security ships approaching. Nathan knew they'd face questions, investigations, probably charges. But they had the data, the recordings, and Morrison as a witness, willing or not. Nathan, Lyra said quietly. Yeah. That little girl, the orphan from the convoy? I've been thinking about her. What about her? After this is over, after the trials and investigations, someone should check on her. Make sure she's okay. Nathan looked at her. This woman who'd spent so long believing she was nothing but a weapon. We could do that together. Together, she repeated, as if tasting the word. I suppose we do make a decent team. Decent, we just took down an illegal arms operation, exposed a massive conspiracy, and blew up a ship full of genocidal weapons. I'd say we're a bit better than decent. Don't let it go to your head. Too late. The security ships drew closer, and Nathan could see medical shuttles among them. His shoulder was really starting to hurt now, and he was pretty sure Lyra had taken at least one grazing shot she hadn't mentioned. They're going to separate us, she said. Different interrogations, different medical facilities, standard procedure. I know. But after we meet in the maintenance bay, 0300 as usual. What if they don't let us? Nathan laughed, though it hurt his shoulder. Has anyone ever successfully stopped you from doing something you've decided to do? No. Then I'll see you at 300. The security ships docked with their pod, and suddenly, everything was noise and motion. Medical personnel, security officers, everyone talking at once. They pulled Morrison away first, then began separating Nathan and Lyra. Just before they were taken to different ships, Lyra caught his hand. It was brief, barely a second, but she pressed something into his palm. It was the alignment tool she'd given him that first night, what felt like a lifetime ago. "So you can fix things," she said. "While I'm not there to tell you you're doing it wrong." Then she was gone, whisked away by security, and Nathan was left holding the tool and wondering how his life had changed so completely in such a short time. As the medical team began working on his shoulder, Nathan thought about Morrison's words. Maybe he had always known what his weapons would do. Maybe every designer did. But the difference between him and Morrison was simple. Nathan had looked at what he was creating and chose to stop. Morrison had looked at the same thing and chosen to make it worse. And Lyra, she'd looked at her capacity for violence and chosen to protect rather than destroy. They weren't heroes. They were just two broken people trying to fix things, one repair at a time. But sometimes, Nathan thought as the pain medication finally kicked in, that was exactly what the universe needed. The medical shuttle pulled away from the debris field that had been the Meridian Drift, and Nathan closed his eyes, already counting the hours until 0300. The data center on Kronos Station floated at the edge of Alliance space, like a steel cathedral dedicated to the worship of information. Every transaction, every communication, every dirty secret in 3 systems passed through its quantum processors at some point, which made it both the perfect target and the most dangerous place Nathan and Lyra could possibly infiltrate. They stood in the observation lounge of a civilian transport, watching the station grow larger through the viewport. 3 weeks had passed since the Meridian Drift incident. 3 weeks of interrogations, investigations, and bureaucratic stonewalling. Morrison had been quietly transferred to a minimum security facility. Commander Price had disappeared entirely, and the news cycle had moved on to other tragedies. "They're not going to stop," Lyra said, her reflection ghost-like in the transparent steel. Morrison and Price were just middle management. The real power behind this is still out there. Nathan flexed his newly healed shoulder, still tender despite the accelerated treatment. "I know. That's why we're here." The data they'd pulled from the Meridian Drift had revealed payments, coded communications, references to something called the Prometheus Council. But every lead dead-ended at Kronos Station's data center. Someone was using it to coordinate the entire operation while staying completely anonymous. "You're sure your contact can get us in?" Lyra asked. "Marcus is reliable. He owes me. I kept his son out of prison after a hacking incident 2 years ago. And he knows what we're planning. He knows we need access. The less he knows beyond that, the safer he is." Lyra turned from the viewport to study him. In the 3 weeks since their separation, something had changed between them. The careful distance they'd maintained had collapsed into something more immediate, more dangerous. They'd started finishing each other's sentences, moving in sync without communication, sharing silences that said more than words. "The station has 8,000 people on it," she said. "If we destroy the data center, we're not destroying it. I've been working on something better." Nathan pulled out a modified datapad, showing her code that had taken him 2 weeks to perfect. A surgical strike. We isolate the Prometheus Council's data, expose it, and leave everything else intact. "That's impossible. The processing power alone would be impossible if I was working with standard equipment. But remember that alignment tool you gave me. It works on quantum processors too. I can create a resonance cascade that will isolate specific data streams without affecting the others." Lyra stared at him. "You weaponized my gift?" "I improved it. There's a difference." "You're impossible." "You've mentioned that before." Marcus Tam met them at the docking ring, looking nervous enough to vibrate out of his skin. He was a small man, human, but augmented with Terran neural implants that made his eyes glow slightly in the dim light. "Dr. Cole," he said, shaking Nathan's hand with desperate enthusiasm. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come." "I always keep my promises. Marcus, this is my associate. Captain Vale." Marcus's face went pale. "You didn't mention I didn't know." "Is that a problem?" Lyra's voice could have frozen helium. No, no, just unexpected. The security protocols I've arranged might not be sufficient for someone of your reputation. They'll be fine, Nathan said quickly. We're just maintenance workers. Remember, here to fix a cooling system malfunction? Marcus handed them identification badges and maintenance uniforms. Level 15, Section C. The quantum core access is through the maintenance tunnel. You'll have maybe 20 minutes before the next security sweep. That's enough, Nathan said. I hope so, because if you're caught, I never saw you. Understood. They made their way through the station. Just 2 more maintenance workers in a sea of technical staff. The uniforms were uncomfortable, designed for function over form, but they made them invisible. Nobody looked twice at maintenance staff. Level 15 was colder than the rest of the station. The air thin and metallic. The quantum processors needed near absolute zero to function, and even with the insulation, the cold seeped through. Here, Lyra said, stopping at an innocuous panel. Her scanner showed the maintenance tunnel beyond, exactly where Marcus had said it would be. They crawled through darkness, punctuated by the blue glow of processing nodes. The tunnel was barely large enough for one person, forcing them to move single file. Nathan tried not to think about what would happen if they were discovered here. No room to fight, nowhere to run. The quantum core chamber was beautiful in an alien way. Crystalline structures floated in suspension fields, their surfaces rippling with calculations happening at speeds human minds couldn't comprehend. The hum of processing power was almost musical, a harmony of pure information. There, Nathan whispered, pointing to an access terminal. I need 10 minutes. You have 8 before the security sweep. He connected his modified equipment. The alignment tool, now part of a complex interface he'd built from salvaged parts and desperate innovation. The code began its work, searching through exabytes of data for the specific signatures they'd identified. Nathan, Lyra said quietly. Motion sensors just went active. Someone's coming. I need more time. You don't have it. Through the transparent aluminum walls, they could see security guards approaching. Not the regular patrol, these were military, armed with weapons that could punch through the chamber's walls. They know we're here, Lyra said, already checking her weapon. 5 more minutes. We don't have 5 minutes. The guards were setting up at the entrance, preparing to breach. Nathan's fingers flew across the interface, the code adapting, searching, isolating. He could see it now: financial records, communication logs, names and faces of the Prometheus Council. Got it, he breathed. I have everything. Good, because the wall exploded. Not the entrance where the guards were, but the opposite wall. Through the smoke and debris came figures in advanced combat armor, moving with inhuman speed and precision. The security guards turned to face this new threat, and the chamber erupted into crossfire. Corporate military, Lyra identified, pulling Nathan behind a processing node as energy bolts sizzled past. Someone else wants this data, or wants to stop us from getting it. One of the armored figures spotted them and advanced. Lyra moved to intercept, but Nathan grabbed her arm. Wait, I have an idea. He pulled out a second device, something he'd hoped not to use. It was crude, dangerous, and violated pretty much every safety protocol for quantum processing. But desperate times. When I say run, we go for the maintenance tunnel. Nathan, what are you? He activated the device and threw it into the center of the processing array. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the quantum cores began to resonate, their harmonious hum becoming a discordant shriek. Run! They dove for the tunnel as the chamber behind them went insane. The resonance cascade he'd created wasn't isolating data. It was creating a feedback loop that would cause every processor to calculate the same equation simultaneously. The result was a localized reality distortion, space-time itself hiccuping as the processors tried to divide by zero on a quantum level. They crawled through the tunnel as fast as they could, the screaming of tortured physics behind them. When they emerged, alarms were blaring throughout the station. "What did you do?" Lyra demanded. "Created a distraction. You broke reality." "Only a little. It'll stabilize in a few minutes." Security was everywhere. But in the chaos, two maintenance workers running with everyone else didn't stand out. They made it to the docking ring, where Marcus was waiting with a small courier ship. "Get in," he shouted. "Half the station's going crazy." They launched just as the station's defensive grid activated, assuming they were under attack. Through the rear viewport, Nathan could see the quantum core chamber. It was glowing, reality bending around it like heat shimmer. "The data?" Lyra asked. Nathan held up his datapad. "All here. Names, locations, financial records, everything we need to—" He stopped, staring at the screen. "What's wrong? This can't be right." He showed her the data. The Prometheus Council wasn't a shadowy organization of arms dealers and war profiteers. It was worse. Much worse. The council consisted of 7 members, all highly placed in different governments and corporations. But what made Nathan's blood run cold was the last name on the list, Admiral Sarah Cole. His sister. "That's not possible," he whispered. Lyra took the pad, scanning through the data. "Nathan, look at the financial records. She's not running this. She's being blackmailed." The record showed regular payments from Sarah's personal accounts to a numbered account, along with coded messages that became increasingly desperate. Someone had leverage on her, something that had forced her to provide intelligence and clearances for the council's operations. "We need to contact her," Nathan said. "It could be a trap." "She's my sister." "And that's exactly why it could be a trap." Marcus's voice cut through their argument. "We have a problem. 3 Alliance destroyers just dropped out of hyperspace. They're demanding we surrender." Nathan looked at the approaching ships, then at the datapad showing his sister's involvement. Everything had just become infinitely more complicated. "Can you outrun them?" Lyra asked Marcus. "In this bucket, not a chance." "Then we surrender," Nathan said. Both Lyra and Marcus stared at him. "Nathan," Lyra said carefully, "they'll bury us. Everything we've discovered—" "Not if we transmit it first." He was already working, uploading the data to every news outlet, government oversight committee, and watchdog organization he could reach. "But we leave Sarah's name out of it, for now." "You're protecting her." "I'm giving her a chance to explain." The upload completed just as the Alliance ships locked weapons on them. Nathan deleted Sarah's data from their copies, leaving enough evidence to expose the rest of the council, but keeping his sister's involvement hidden. "This is Admiral Sarah Cole of the Alliance Navy." A familiar voice came through the comm. "Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." Nathan and Lyra exchanged glances. Of all the people to apprehend them, it had to be her. 20 minutes later, they stood in the cargo bay of Sarah's flagship, surrounded by Marines. Sarah herself entered last, her uniform immaculate, her expression unreadable. She looked older than Nathan remembered, stress lines carved deep around her eyes. "Nathan," she said simply, "you've caused quite a mess." "Sarah, you've caused a bigger one." Something flickered in her eyes, pain. Maybe, or regret. "Clear the bay," she ordered. "I want to speak with them alone." "Admiral, that's not advisable." One of the Marines started. "I said clear the bay." When they were alone, Sarah's composure cracked. "You stupid, reckless fool. Do you have any idea what you've done? Exposed a conspiracy that killed 3,000 people. Started a war." She began pacing, a habit from their childhood when she was upset. The Prometheus Council wasn't just selling weapons. They were maintaining a balance, keeping the major powers in check through carefully controlled conflicts. "That's insane," Lyra said. "Is it? Do you know what happens when great powers have no outlet for their aggression? When they stockpile weapons with no small conflicts to test them in?" Sarah turned to face them. They have big conflicts, world-ending conflicts. So you were part of managed slaughter, Nathan said, his voice cold, keeping the death toll at acceptable levels. I was trying to prevent billions from dying. Sarah pulled out a data pad, showing classified projections. Every model shows the same thing. Without controlled conflicts, we have full-scale war within 5 years, hundreds of billions dead. And the Celestial Path convoy, those refugees were just acceptable losses. Sarah's face crumpled. No, that wasn't supposed to happen. The convoy was meant to be disabled, not destroyed. The refugees would be rescued, used as political leverage. But someone changed the parameters. Morrison exceeded his authority. And you couldn't stop it. I tried, God, Nathan, I tried, but they have... She stopped, jaw clenching. They have something on you, Lyra said. What is it? Sarah was silent for a long moment. Then, our parents didn't die in an accident. They were killed because Dad discovered something he shouldn't have. The Prometheus Council's predecessors arranged it. I found out 3 years ago, and they've been using it as leverage ever since. If I don't cooperate, they'll release evidence that our mother was involved in weapon smuggling. Her name, her memory, everything she stood for would be destroyed. Nathan felt the floor drop out from under him. Their parents had been humanitarian workers, killed in what everyone said was a transport malfunction. To learn it was murder. That their mother might have been involved in something criminal. You should have told me, he said quietly. And involved you in this, you'd already lost your career for having principles. I wasn't going to let you lose your life too. So instead you let thousands die. I made impossible choices. Sarah's control finally snapped. Every option led to death. I chose the path with the smallest body count. There's always another way, Nathan said. I learned that from someone recently. He glanced at Lyra. You don't have to accept the options they give you. You can create new ones. Like what expose everything and watch the galaxy burn. Like taking down the council without triggering their contingencies. Nathan pulled out his datapad. I've been analyzing their operations. They're not as omnipotent as they want you to believe. They're 7 people playing God with limited resources and a lot of fear. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. They're using the threat of war to justify causing smaller wars. It's protection racket on a galactic scale. He showed her his analysis. But look at their financial records. They're not preventing wars. They're profiting from them. Every controlled conflict makes them richer and more powerful. Sarah studied the data, her expression shifting from skepticism to shock. These numbers, they've been lying about the projections. Of course they have. Fear is their real weapon, not the actual arms they're selling. But if we expose this, if we take them down, there will be chaos, Lyra interrupted. For a while, but chaos isn't the same as war. Sometimes systems need to collapse before they can be rebuilt properly. Sarah looked between them. These 2 unlikely allies, who'd somehow found her brother and given him purpose again. You're asking me to betray everything I've sworn to protect. No, Nathan said. I'm asking you to actually protect it, instead of just managing its slow destruction. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Sarah spoke. There's a data core on Terra Station. Everything the Council has plans, contingencies, blackmail material on hundreds of officials. If we could get to it. Nathan asked. You didn't think I was going to let my little brother have all the fun, did you? For the first time in years, Sarah smiled. It was tired and worn, but genuine. Besides, you'll need someone with Admiral-level clearance to get anywhere near Terra Station. This is treason, Lyra pointed out. Yes, Sarah agreed. But Nathan's right. I've been choosing between evils for so long. I forgot there might be other options. The Council will know something's wrong if you don't report our capture, Nathan said. Then we'll have to make it look good. Sarah moved to a weapons locker. pulling out a stun baton. "This is going to hurt." "Wait, what?" Sarah stunned herself, the charge knocking her unconscious. As she fell, Nathan caught her, lowering her gently to the floor. "Did she just—" Lyra started. "Yeah, always had a flair for the dramatic." Nathan checked Sarah's pulse, then activated her emergency beacon. "Marines will be here in 2 minutes. We need to go." They took Sarah's access codes and shuttle, launching just as alarms began blaring. The flagship's crew would find their admiral unconscious. 2 prisoners escaped. Sarah would have plausible deniability, at least for a while. "Terra Station is 5 days from here," Lyra said, plotting their course. "The Council will know we're coming." "Good. Let them prepare." They're expecting Nathan Cole, the failed weapons designer, and Lyra Vale, the broken soldier. He looked at her. This woman who'd taught him that strength wasn't about the weapons you carried, but the choices you made. They're not prepared for who we've become. And who have we become? Nathan considered the question. A month ago. He'd been hiding in a maintenance bay, trying to forget his past. Lyra had been drowning in guilt and isolation. Now they were planning to take down a conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of galactic government. "People who fix things," he said finally. "Even when everyone says they're unfixable." Lyra actually smiled at that. "You know we'll probably die trying this." "Probably. But if we don't try, those 3,000 refugees died for nothing. Morrison gets away with it. The Council keeps playing God." "And your sister?" "Sarah made her choice, now we make ours." As their shuttle entered hyperspace, Nathan thought about the alignment tool in his pocket, the one Lyra had given him that had somehow become the key to everything. Such a small thing, but it had aligned more than just processors and circuits. It had aligned 2 broken people into something stronger. Terra Station awaited, and with it, either their deaths or the chance to change everything. Nathan found, to his surprise, that he was okay with either outcome. He'd spent 3 years running from his past. Now, finally, he was running towards something. "Nathan," Lyra said quietly. "Yeah, after this is over, if we survive." "When we survive." "When we survive," she corrected. "What then?" He thought about it. "Remember that little girl from the convoy, the orphan?" "Yes." "Maybe we check on her. Make sure she's okay. Make sure she knows her parents' deaths meant something. Together." Together. The stars blurred past outside their viewport, and Nathan felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not for redemption. Some things couldn't be redeemed. But for the chance to build something better from the ruins of what they'd been. The Prometheus Council thought they controlled the future through fear and managed violence. They were about to learn what happened when people stopped being afraid and started getting creative. "Hey, Lyra," Nathan said, pulling up the technical specifications for Terra Station. "What? Want to help me figure out how to break into the most secure facility in human space without killing anyone?" She laughed, actually laughed. "You really don't ask for easy things, do you? Where's the fun in easy?" They bent over the specifications together, 2 people who'd found each other in the darkness and decided to light a match rather than curse it. Terra Station grew closer with every passing hour, and with it, the price of vengeance. But Nathan was beginning to understand that vengeance and justice weren't the same thing. Vengeance was about punishment. Justice was about prevention. And sometimes, just sometimes, it was about redemption too. Even for weapons designers who'd lost their way. Even for soldiers who'd forgotten how to be human. Even for sisters who'd made impossible choices in impossible situations. The shuttle hummed around them, carrying them toward either triumph or disaster. But for the first time in years, Nathan wasn't facing it alone. And that, he thought as Lyra pointed out a weakness in the station's defensive grid, made all the difference. Terra Station hung in space like a crystalline spiderweb, its transparent aluminum corridors and chambers reflecting the light of Earth's sun. It was beautiful, ethereal, and according to their infiltration plan, completely impossible to breach without triggering every alarm in the solar system. "This is suicide," Lyra said for the fifth time, studying the holographic layout of the station. "You've said that about every plan we've made," Nathan replied, adjusting the parameters on his custom-built scrambler. "Yet, here we are, still breathing."
Luck runs out, Nathan.
"It's not luck. It's preparation meeting opportunity." He highlighted a section of the station's blueprints. "Look here, the waste processing system. It's the only part of the station that isn't constantly monitored, because it's full of toxic waste and radiation, which our suits can handle for about 20 minutes, long enough to get inside and access the maintenance network." They were docked at Lunar Port, their stolen shuttle hidden among hundreds of civilian vessels. Sarah's access codes had gotten them this far, but Terra Station required physical presence to access its most secure systems. The Prometheus Council's data core was in the heart of the station, protected by layers of security that made their previous infiltrations look like walking through open doors. "Even if we get in," Lyra said, "the moment we access the data core, every guard on the station will converge on us. Unless they're distracted." Nathan pulled up a newsfeed. "Look at this. The Alliance is holding an emergency session about the leaked Prometheus documents. Half the Council will be there, trying to do damage control."
Half isn't all.
"No, but it's better odds than we've had before." Lyra was quiet for a moment, then said, "There's something else. Something you're not telling me." Nathan hesitated. She knew him too well now, could read the tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided meeting her eyes when he was hiding something. "The data from Chronos Station," he said finally. "I did a deep analysis while you were sleeping. The Prometheus Council isn't just 7 people. It's a system that's been in place for decades, maybe longer. Even if we expose everything, destroy their data, arrest every member, the system remains."
Yes, unless what?
Nathan turned to face her fully. "Unless we don't just expose them. Unless we replace them with something better. You want to take over the Prometheus Council? I want to transform it. Turn it from a shadow organization that profits from conflict into something that actually prevents it. Use their networks, their resources, but for genuine peacekeeping." Lyra stared at him.
That's not revenge. Nathan, that's revolution.
"Maybe it's both. Maybe that's what real revenge looks like, not destroying your enemies, but transforming their weapons into tools for peace. You're an idealist."
And you're a pragmatist. Together, we might actually pull this off."
She was silent for a long moment, studying him with those copper eyes that had seen too much. "You know what this means, don't you? If we succeed, we can't just walk away. We'd have to run it, maintain it, make sure it doesn't corrupt again."
"I know."
"No more quiet nights in the maintenance bay. We'll find new maintenance bays, better ones, with working lights." "Despite everything," she smiled, "you're impossible." "You've mentioned that before." They suited up in radiation gear that would give them minimal protection, but maximum mobility. The waste processing intake was on the station's underside, a massive port that opened every 6 hours to eject processed materials into the sun's gravity well. "We have a 4-minute window," Nathan said, checking his chronometer. "Once the port opens, we get in, get to the maintenance hatch, and hope my scrambler works on their security.
And if it doesn't?
Then we improvise."
I hate when you say that.
The port opened exactly on schedule, a massive iris dilating to reveal the processing chamber beyond. They launched from their shuttle using minimal thrusters, 2 small figures against the vast backdrop of space. The chamber rushed toward them, and then they were inside, magnetic boots clamping onto the metal floor as the port sealed behind them. Red warning lights bathed everything in hellish light. The radiation counter on Nathan's suit immediately started climbing. 20 minutes had just become 15. "This way," Lyra said, leading them through the maze of processing equipment. The maintenance hatch was exactly where the blueprints said it would be. But it was also sealed with a lock Nathan didn't recognize. "That's new," he muttered, examining the biometric scanner. "Military grade, installed recently. They knew we were coming. Or they're just paranoid." He pulled out his scrambler, but before he could activate it, the hatch opened from the inside. Sarah stood there, wearing an admiral's dress uniform and an expression of grim determination. "About time," she said. "I was starting to think you'd gotten lost." "Sarah," Nathan stared at his sister. "How did you know you'd come through waste processing? Because I know you, little brother. You always take the path everyone else thinks is impossible." She stepped aside. "Come on. We don't have much time." They followed her through maintenance corridors that shouldn't have been empty but were. Every security checkpoint they passed was mysteriously unmanned. Every camera pointed in the wrong direction. "You arranged this," Lyra said. It wasn't a question. "I've been arranging this for 3 years," Sarah replied. "Ever since I learned the truth about our parents. Did you really think I'd just accept being blackmailed? I've been building my own network, identifying others who want out but can't leave." "How many?" "Enough. Admiral Reyes in the Hegemony Fleet, Commander Tova in the Chiron military, Dr. Harrison in weapons development. We've all been waiting for someone to light the match." She glanced at Nathan. "I didn't expect it to be my pacifist brother." "Former pacifist," Nathan corrected. "Turns out I'm willing to fight for the right things." They reached a security door that required Admiral-level clearance. Sarah placed her hand on the scanner, but nothing happened. "Lockdown," she said, frowning. "Someone knows we're here. Can you override it?" "Not from here. We need to—" The door opened from the other side. Commander Rachel Price stood there, flanked by a dozen guards in full combat armor. But instead of weapons raised, they stood at ease. "Admiral Cole," Price said formally. "Dr. Cole, Captain Vale." "Rachel," Sarah said carefully. "I suppose you're here to stop us." "Actually," Price said, and her entire demeanor changed, exhaustion replacing her usual sharp efficiency. "I'm here to help." Nathan's hand went to his weapon. "This is a trap!" "No trap. Just someone else who's tired of the game." Price dismissed the guards with a gesture, and they filed out without question. When the door sealed, she seemed to deflate. "Do you know what it's like, Dr. Cole? To enforce policies you know are wrong, to send good people to their deaths for bad reasons. You seemed to enjoy it when you were destroying my career. I was following orders, just like I was following orders when I helped coordinate the convoy attack." Her voice turned bitter. 3,000 people, including 400 children. I have their names memorized. Every single one." "Guilt doesn't absolve you," Lyra said coldly. "No, it doesn't. But action might begin to." Price pulled out a datapad. "Every member of the Prometheus Council is currently in the emergency session. I've isolated the data core and disabled its deletion protocols. You have 30 minutes before anyone notices." Nathan studied her, looking for deception. "Why?" "Because your sister convinced me there was another way. Because I'm tired of being a monster in service to other monsters. Because—" She paused, composing herself. "Because I have a daughter. She's 6. The same age as some of the children on that convoy. I can't look at her anymore without seeing their faces." Sarah placed a hand on Price's shoulder. "Rachel's been feeding me information for months. She's the reason I knew you'd been captured at Kronos." "This is all very touching," Lyra interrupted. "But we're on a clock. Where's the data core?" Price led them deeper into the station, through corridors that became progressively more secure and austere. The data core itself was a sphere of quantum processors suspended in a null gravity chamber, accessible only through a single bridge. "Beautiful," Nathan breathed, staring at the construction. "Also terrifying." "Everything important is both," Sarah said. She moved to the access terminal. Nathan, I need your scrambler. The core has adaptive encryption. It changes every few seconds. He handed her the device, then stopped. Wait. If you've been planning this for 3 years, if you have a network of people ready to change things, why did you need us? Sarah's fingers paused over the terminal. Because you did something I couldn't. You walked away. You chose conscience over career, integrity over security. The network I built. They're all like me, people who want change but are too embedded in the system to risk it. We needed someone from outside to show us it was possible. And I needed someone to show me that walking away wasn't enough. Nathan replied. He glanced at Lyra. That sometimes you have to walk back and fix what's broken. The scrambler engaged, and data began flowing across the screens. Names, dates, financial records, recorded conversations, decades of conspiracy laid bare. But there was more. Plans for future conflicts, assessments of which colonies were expendable, projections for acceptable casualty rates in manufactured wars. They planned everything, Price said, horror in her voice. Every conflict for the next 50 years. Not anymore, Sarah said. She began uploading the data, not to news outlets but to something else, a secure network Nathan didn't recognize. What are you doing? Sending this to every person in my network. Military officials, government ministers, corporate executives, all the people who've been unwittingly serving the council's agenda. When they see this, understand how they've been used. The system collapses, Nathan finished. And we rebuild it, Sarah added. But right. An alarm began blaring. On the security feed, they could see guards converging on their position. So much for 30 minutes, Lyra muttered. It's enough, Sarah said. Upload's complete. Now we just need to... The chamber's main door exploded inward. Through the smoke came Morrison, very much not in prison, wearing powered armor and carrying a weapon Nathan recognized with sick dread, one of his own designs, a prototype that had been deemed too dangerous for production. Did you really think it would be that easy? Morrison asked, his voice amplified by the armor's speakers. That you could just walk in and steal everything? Morrison, Price said, genuine surprise in her voice. You're supposed to be in custody. The council has resources you can't imagine. Prison was just a temporary inconvenience. He aimed the weapon at them. Step away from the terminal. It's too late, Sarah said. The data's already been transmitted. To your little network. Yes, I know about that. Did you think you were the only one playing the long game? Morrison smiled. Every person in your network has been identified. They're all being arrested as we speak. Conspiracy, treason, terrorism, the charges will ensure they never see daylight again. Nathan felt the hope drain out of him. If Morrison was right, they hadn't just failed. They'd condemned dozens of good people. You're lying, Lyra said. I check your feeds. Sarah pulled up a news stream. Sure enough, reports were coming in of arrests across 3 systems. Military officials, government workers, all being detained on terrorism charges. You see, Morrison continued, the council knew about your sister's network from the beginning. We let it grow, let it think it was hidden, because it was useful. It identified everyone who might oppose us. And now, thanks to you, we can remove them all at once. There's just one problem with your plan, Nathan said quietly. Morrison's weapon swung toward him. And what's that? You assumed we were trying to save the network. Nathan pulled out a second device, one he'd been carrying since they left Lunar Port. It looked like his scrambler, but the internal components were very different. What is that? Morrison demanded. Something I've been working on. A new kind of weapon. Non-lethal. Of course I've reformed. Remember? But very effective. If you activate any device, I'll kill you all. No, you won't. Nathan smiled. Because this device is already active. Has been since we entered the station. It's been recording everything, not just audio and video, But quantum signatures, biometric data, even your brain patterns. Morrison, everything you've said, thought, and felt for the last hour. Morrison's face went pale behind his helmet's visor.
That's impossible. Is it I designed the processing systems for the station? Remember, before you took my job? I spent 2 years integrating quantum processors into every aspect of Terra Station's operations. I left myself more than just backdoors. I left myself the ability to turn the entire station into a recording device.
Even if that's true, recordings can be faked. Not quantum recordings. They're impossible to falsify because they capture the actual quantum states of reality. Every court in the galaxy accepts them as absolute proof. Nathan held up the device. And this little transmitter has been sending everything to a quantum blockchain distributed across thousands of nodes. Unchangeable. Undeletable. Sarah caught on. Which means everyone will know that the terrorism charges are false. That the council orchestrated everything.
Including,
Lyra added, pulling out her own weapon.
Morrison admitting to escaping from prison with council help. Kind of undermines the legitimacy of your arrests when you're working with an escaped prisoner.
Morrison's weapon wavered.
You're bluffing!
Nathan activated a wall display, showing the quantum blockchain. Data was flowing in real time, not just from their recording, but from dozens of other sources. My network was bigger than just government officials, Sarah said. Every person who's been arrested was wearing a quantum recorder. Every interrogation, every threat, every violation of legal protocol is being broadcast. The media will never publish it. They don't need to, Price interrupted. It's going directly to public blockchain. Anyone can access it. Everyone will see it. Morrison's armor began to power up. Weapon systems coming online. Then I'll kill you all and blame it on a terrorist attack. Go ahead, Nathan said. Kill us on a quantum recording. Show the entire galaxy that you murdered an admiral, a decorated war hero, and 2 others in cold blood. I'm sure that will really help the council's legitimacy.
You think you've won, Morrison snarled. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The council isn't just 7 people, it's an idea. The idea that someone needs to make the hard choices, that peace requires controlled violence.
Maybe, Nathan agreed, but ideas can change. People can choose differently.
People are sheep, they need to be led.
No, Lyra said, stepping forward.
They need to be given the chance to choose. You never gave them that. You decided for them, played God with their lives.
Morrison laughed bitterly. And what will you do differently? You think exposing us will magically create peace? There will be chaos, war, billions dead. Or, Sarah interrupted, there will be difficult conversations, treaty renegotiations, and yes, some conflict. But real conflict, with real reasons, not manufactured wars for profit. You're naive. We're hopeful, Nathan corrected. There's a difference. Morrison stood there for a long moment, weapon still raised, armor humming with deadly potential. Then, slowly, he lowered the weapon. It doesn't matter, he said. The council has contingencies, dead man switches. If we fall, the financial markets crash, certain military units go rogue, and 3 colonies lose power. Nathan finished. Yes, we know. We've been disabling them for the last week. Morrison stared at him.
How?
Every system has a weakness. Yours was arrogance. You assumed no one would ever gather enough pieces to see the whole picture. Nathan gestured to their small group. But a disgraced weapons designer, a haunted soldier, an admiral under blackmail, and a commander with a conscience together. We had all the pieces. This isn't over, Morrison said, backing toward the door. The council is currently being arrested, Price said, checking her datapad. The quantum recordings were very convincing. Admiral Reyes and Commander Tova are personally overseeing the operations. Morrison ran. They let him go. A man in powered armor couldn't hide for long, and they had bigger concerns. The data core, Sarah said, returning to the terminal. We need to secure everything before... She stopped, staring at the screen. Nathan, look at this. He moved to see what she'd found. It was a file, buried deep in the council's records, labeled simply Origin. Open it, he said. The file contained documents going back over a century. The Prometheus Council hadn't started as a conspiracy. It had been a legitimate peacekeeping organization, founded after a war that had killed billions. Its original charter was noble: prevent such conflicts from ever happening again. They were trying to do good, Sarah said quietly, until they decided the ends justified any means. Lyra added, It's always the same story. Good intentions twisted into something monstrous. Nathan studied the documents, seeing the gradual shift from prevention to manipulation, from peacekeeping to profiteering. This is why we can't just destroy it. We need to restore it to what it was meant to be. And how do we prevent it from corrupting again? Price asked. Transparency, Nathan said. No more shadows. Everything the new organization does is public, accountable. That's not how intelligence works. Then we make it work differently. He turned to face them all. We have a chance here to build something new. Not perfect, but better. Are you in? Sarah nodded immediately. Price, after a moment's hesitation, did the same. They all looked at Lyra. I'm a soldier, she said. I don't know how to build, only destroy. You're wrong, Nathan said. You saved my life without killing anyone. You chose to wound Morrison's guards instead of killing them. You've been building something with me for weeks. Trust, partnership, hope. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then, the little girl from the convoy, the orphan. If we do this, can we ensure she's taken care of? First priority, Nathan promised. Then yes, I'm in. Alarms were still blaring. But now, they could hear different sounds, cheering from some quarters. Confusion from others as the quantum recordings spread through the station and beyond. The galaxy was waking up to the truth, and the reaction was mixed. It's going to be chaos for a while, Sarah said. Better honest chaos than manufactured order, Nathan replied. They spent the next 6 hours in the data core, coordinating with Sarah's network those who hadn't been arrested, and beginning the delicate work of dismantling the council systems while preserving what could be salvaged. As Earth's sun began to set beyond the station's viewports, casting everything in golden light, Nathan found himself standing beside Lyra on the observation deck. We did it, she said, disbelief in her voice. We started it, he corrected. The real work comes now. Building instead of breaking. Yeah. She turned to look at him. That night in the maintenance bay, when you first sat in my blind spot, did you know it would lead to this? I just wanted to fix a power core in peace. And now you're fixing the galaxy. We're fixing it, together. She reached out, taking his hand. It was the first time she'd initiated contact like this, and Nathan felt something shift between them, walls finally coming down completely. Nathan, she said quietly, there's something I need to tell you. What? The weapon Morrison was carrying, I recognized it. It was one of yours, but modified. The modifications. They matched patterns I've seen before. Chiron military patterns. Nathan frowned. What are you saying? I'm saying the conspiracy might be bigger than just the Prometheus Council. My people, the Chiron. We might be involved too. Then we investigate that next. It could destroy the peace between our species. Or it could strengthen it if we handle it right. Together. She squeezed his hand. You really are an idealist. And you're really not as cynical as you pretend? They stood there, watching Earth turn below them. Two broken people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to light a match. The work ahead would be hard, dangerous, possibly impossible. But they'd already done the impossible once. Hey Lyra, Nathan said. What? Want to help me convert a shadow organization of war profiteers into a transparent peacekeeping force? She laughed, and it was beautiful.
Ask me something easy next time. Where's the fun in easy? The truth was out now, spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. Some would resist it, others would embrace it, but everyone would have to reckon with it. The age of manufactured conflicts was ending, and something new was beginning. Nathan thought about the alignment tool in his pocket, the gift that had started everything. Such a small thing, but it had aligned more than circuits. It had aligned purposes, people, entire systems. The council was wrong about one thing, he said. What's that? People aren't sheep. Give them the truth. Give them choices. And most will choose correctly. And the ones who don't? That's what we're for. To guide, not control. To prevent, not manipulate. Sarah's voice came over the comm. Nathan, Lyra, you need to see this. They returned to the data core where Sarah was staring at a new file that had just decrypted. What is it? Nathan asked. The real reason our parents were killed? She turned to face them, tears in her eyes. They weren't smuggling weapons. They discovered the original Prometheus conspiracy. They were trying to expose it. Nathan felt the ground shift under him. Their parents had been doing exactly what they were doing now, 30 years ago. They failed, Sarah continued, but they left something, a message, hidden in the council's own files. She played it. Their mother's face appeared on the screen, younger but unmistakably her. If you're seeing this, she said, then the council has fallen and someone has finally finished what we started. Sarah, Nathan, if it's you, know that we're proud of you. The path of conscience is never easy, but it's always right. Build something better from the ashes. And remember, the strongest weapons aren't the ones that destroy, but the ones that protect. The message ended. Nathan and Sarah stood in silence, processing the revelation that their parents had been heroes, not victims. They would be proud, Lyra said softly. You finished their work. We finished it, Nathan corrected. All of us. Price cleared her throat. The emergency session is ending. The council members will be returning soon. Let them come, Sarah said, steel in her voice. We have the truth, the evidence, and the support of half the military. It's over. And it was. Within hours. All 7 council members were in custody. Within days. The financial networks they'd used to fund conflicts were frozen. Within a week, peace talks that had been stalled for years suddenly resumed. It wasn't perfect. There was resistance, violence, those who profited from the old system fighting to preserve it. But there was also hope, for the first time in decades. A month later, Nathan stood in a refugee camp on the edge of Alliance space. Beside him, Lyra held the hand of a small girl, the orphan from the convoy, whose name was Maya. Are you my new parents? Maya asked, looking up at them with eyes too old for her age. Nathan knelt down to her level. If you want us to be, will you leave me too? No, Lyra said firmly. We've both lost people. We know how it feels. We won't do that to you. Maya considered this, then nodded. Okay. As they walked away together, Nathan thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. From a maintenance bay on a forgotten station to reshaping the galaxy's power structures. From isolation to partnership to something that might be family. Nathan, Lyra said quietly. Yeah. The maintenance bay on Vega Crown. It's still there. So maybe we visit sometimes. When things get too complicated. Just to remember where we started. I'd like that. They walked on. 3 people building something new from the ruins of their pasts. It wasn't the ending Nathan had expected when he first sat down in Lyra's blind spot. But then, the best stories never ended the way you expected. They ended better. The truth was finally out. And with it came the hardest challenge of all, living up to it. But Nathan had learned something important. Sometimes the greatest revenge wasn't destroying your enemies. It was proving them wrong by building something better. And with Lyra beside him and Maya's hand in his,
He was ready to build.